The problem is that when people go on a 30-minute break, are they walking through the park? No, they're on their phones, probably on friggin' social media. So their brain is not getting any type of retreat or break from decision making. They leave whatever the task they're doing, which is a good idea, but that 30 minutes is making things worse if they're going on social media. Clinical trials have shown getting a walk in nature is critically important. Our physiology is built to see nature and to be in nature. And so going for that walk, not touching your phone, you absolutely are hitting on a key point that's been clinically shown to increase creativity, improve focus, and improve interpersonal communication and team dynamics.
Strings, welcome to Decisions That Count. Thank you so much for being here today.
No, thank you. It's good to be here. I'm looking forward to the session. I feel like I should lie down as opposed to be sitting up.
Does it feel like a therapy session?
Yeah.
We haven't even started.
Okay, so since you're on the couch, we're going to get straight into it. How did you realize that your identity was clashing with your leadership role?
As I've gone through, I suppose the last few years actually, and you move to the different role as being a chair and establishing a really strong leadership team and a really strong board, and what you used to do begins to clash because you're in the way. And you realize that people are better than you. And it's a horrible thing to admit. It's like, oh my God, who came up with that idea? That's brilliant. That's better than I could ever do. And you begin to feel that you're blocking people and that you're actually a little bit in the way. But you're the founder, you're the leader, you're the gaffer, you're this person. And somehow that's how you're defined because that's what you've always done. But you realize that you're a little bit in the way. But if you move out of the way, what are you? What if you're the founder, you're the leader, and you move out of the way, what's your role? What are you? And I think that's been an internal struggle that I didn't really realize was going on of late. And I've sort of really begun to dug into it. And let's just say it's work in progress because, our roles have changed quite frequently.
And what are you? I'm going to just ask right out. What have you become now? Now you're not...
Confused.com. That sense of, okay, if I'm defined by being the startup mindset, the guy that goes into new fields, the guy that's a bit fearless and a bit crazy and doesn't care about where it goes because you thrive in that. And then actually your role is to take people on that journey with you, but actually put them ahead of you. That's quite an interesting piece. And I think what I've realized, and I've really struggled with this, is that actually your role as you become slightly older, slightly more senior, is to coach more than lead from the front, if that makes sense. Your job is to impart your knowledge on those people a lot more than just going off there. But that is a challenge for someone like me who likes new and startup and shiny toys and is a little bit fearless. And I'm still wrestling with it. What does that identity mean when you're focused on the new and trying to take the business to a slightly different level?
Oh, the strings. I think that's a really cool, and we've never really approached this yet on the podcast, is how our identity can change our decision making. Because what you've gone from is someone who, if I sum it all up, someone who used to do everything to someone who now needs someone else to do it, and you're more the conductor versus the person playing the instrument. What's the cognitive load? Because when you're in the mix doing the job that you're good at, it's things just flow. It's easy to do, and you're used to it, right? But when you switched your identity and your role, what was the load on your brain to try to adapt to this new reality?
I think I realized probably in my 30s, because I think if you're someone if you're very ambitious and you're very driven and you've got this startup mindset that you want to do and you want to create, and you've got this part of your brain, which is creative problem solver. And I think what you realize quite quickly is going from, I talk about being the striker that always put the ball in the back of the net and that's your job. And then you go into midfield to command the team. And then you're a goalkeeper and you're trying to, from the back, and then you're the manager off the pitch, and then you're the chairman, not even in the stadium. And I've tracked that and I've understood that. And I've always tried to surround myself with the opposite of me. So I'm a quick decision maker and a really quick problem solver. So I surround myself with someone who's slow. and I don't mean slow in a negative way, but someone who's more considered, someone who actually goes, hold on strings. Like what? So if I am in a meeting and someone says, we've got a problem with a person or a thing, I'd pick up the phone. I'm like, fire them, do them, like just get it sorted. So I surround myself with someone who says, whoa, strings, stop. And I use them as my counterbalance. So I use them to slow me down. And that's historically been really, really powerful for me on that sort of decision making. I make quick decisions. So find someone who makes more considered decisions. However, what I've noticed is that's fine when you're still the person making a lot of decisions and having to lead. When you actually have to be the coach or the person at the back, that doesn't necessarily work because you're not being asked to make decisions. You're being asked for counsel. You're being asked to mentor and give them guidance, not make the decision. So that identity for me, and that sort of, okay, well, if I've always made decisions and now I'm being asked to kind of coach and mentor, but my happy place is making decisions. My happy place is doing. What decisions am I meant to be making? Because that's not my happy place, if that makes sense. And I'm learning that actually I really do like coaching and mentoring, but it's a different set of decisions that I'm having to make, that, if that makes sense. And that's been a challenge, I think, as a leader and a founder, as to what does that actually mean in your decision making? What actually should you be doing? Because you're giving advice as opposed to solving the problem, if that makes sense. Or is that just random?
No, it makes sense. It is a big switch. And I guess kind of a follow-up question is what's the level of emotional engagement for those decisions for you then? So going from the one being responsible for your decisions, obviously, to one that, now you're mentoring, encouraging, and coaching. It's a very different emotional kind of state versus outcome versus personal development. So what like from an emotional standpoint of those decisions and those tasks, what's the difference?
I think one piece that was a little bit of an aha moment was this. My business coach actually was talking about how with age, you naturally become more of a coach. And there's a physiological thing that happens. And please challenge it if it's wrong, because I'll go back to him and say he's talking BS. But there's something that happens as we get older, maybe why grandparents impart knowledge, maybe why some cultures make you live with your grandparents to get that knowledge base. But because I've began to realize that is a natural piece, but also the role I need to play, I've lent into that decision making a bit more. So I've begun to formalize more of the coaching and the mentoring sessions with team members. I've begun to say, okay, I'm going to make this a focus as opposed to a resistance of, I don't want to do that because I like making decisions, to actually, can I coach people a bit more in the business? Can I spend the time helping them, setting them some problems, and being in that way, which, imparting, this is what I think you need to do a little bit, but actually tell me what you think the problem is. How can we work through this? And there's slightly a different approach to how do we solve the problems or make decisions in the business and actually help them do that, as opposed to this is what you need to do, which is maybe the historical approach of a founder.
I'd love to go back to what you were saying before about, you being a fast decision maker and partnering or pairing up or surrounding yourself with maybe the opposite of you. I'm here for it in terms of the skills, but I'm very much like you. I am like fast decisions. Shawn's going to be like, oh yeah, okay. Because I'm quick. I work fast, want to make lots of decisions, fast to fail, fast to solve problems. Like, you get on the phone, let's just solve it. And our CEO, Aaron, he's like amazing. He's slower. He's much more considered. And I've never thought about it, like you've just said, as to kind of actually having that partner that can slow you down in the best possible way. But it's also like where some of my frustrations come from, because I'm so quick to make decisions. That, what is the benefits of having somebody there to slow you down? Someone who's more considered. What is the benefits of having somebody there to slow you down? Someone who's more considered.
I always used to talk about tap dancers and cogs, and that's not in a negative way, but the showman of agency life, or the salesman or the founder or the fundraiser, the person that's out there going, yeah, look at us, we're an amazing business, we're doing that, and the hunter mindset. When I first set the agency up in 2008, sat in Red Bull's offices deciding what I wanted to do, my wife at the time was thinking about what she would do, and she's at agency as well, and we worked together, and she was thinking about a path that she wanted to go on. And what I was thinking was, okay, I want to do all these things, but who's going to do all the stuff I don't want to do, right? Finance, like admin, like operations, that's where I get my love. And I'd said to her, I don't suppose you want to join me on this journey with PrettyGreen? And she was like, yeah, because she is that person. So she took on all of those things. So I'd say the cog, the person that enables me to do the things that I really want to do. So selfishly, I surround myself with people who enable me to do more of the things that I want to do without making them think that they're just picking up all the crap that I don't want. So her love and her passion is operations, is detail. Mine isn't. And therefore you combine those two, and that really works. The other thing that I identified probably 20 years ago was Thomas International disc profiling. I really, really got this idea that I'm a high I, high D, really influence and just want to get stuff done and want to win. And what I couldn't understand was why some people were slower and they were a high S, and, they wanted that side of them. They wanted to make slower decisions. They wanted to, they wanted security. They were, what we class as the HR type people. Is everyone okay? Why is so-and-so crying? And let's consider this. And I wanted a quick decision, get stuff done. And in understanding that, and I'd liken it to someone with a phobia, that I just don't understand why someone's scared of balloons, but they really are scared of balloons. I look at people in that way. I do not understand why you're slow at making a decision. I do not understand why you can't go over there and have an argument with someone. And because I think of them as having a phobia, I can accept it, but I don't understand it. It's alien to me that they are different. But being a little bit selfish and ruthless in, you're here to help me do more of the things that I want to do, you could argue it's a little bit manipulative that I'm surrounding myself with people who love process and who love compliance because it enables me to do more of the things that I want to do. And then what I think about in that way is, as long as I really, really, really respect and trust that person, and I think they're brilliant at what they do, I'm really happy to seek counsel and ask an opinion. If I don't, I'm going to railroad straight through you and over you, and you're against me as opposed to with me, if that makes sense. So it's taken a lot of time to understand that about myself, but also about how best to work with people who are different.
I resonate with all of that so much. Too much. I'm like, okay, yeah. I love being in the startup world where, it's quick, it's fast. I'm loving kind of the decision making now, but I can't imagine being in your position, that feeling of not being in control anymore and handing those decisions over feels terrifying to me at this point. Obviously, I'm not there. I'm not where you are yet. I've got a while to go, but how do you feel about letting go of those decisions?
When you let go of those decisions, or you let go of the agency and you see the agency growing, and better than you could, make it in a way, because the agency gets to a certain size and it needs a certain type of decision maker and it needs a certain type of patience around bureaucracy. That's, you have to let go. You have to slightly let go of your ego and go, it's for the best. And founders need to know when to let go. They need to, when are they not the right person to be in the room? When are they just not relevant? When are they too old, too young, too immature, too emotionally connected to a problem that they just need to get out of the room? And I think that comes with a level of maturity and self-belief that you can do that. But it doesn't stop you thinking, I'm going to go again. I want to do this again. I want to try and recreate that sense of joy and love and excitement and magic that some of us get from being founders and startup. And, you just get shit done. I'll be a liar if I said I'm not thinking about, I'm going to do that again and again and again. But there's something in, are you trying to recreate the past? And are you trying to relive your youth? Or actually, is it possible to keep doing it? And I think that's probably a challenge and a decision and a thought that we've all kind of go through probably at this stage when you're a founder.
So I just find that like from basic biology and ecosystems all the way through to humans, like studies from McKinsey and things like that show that having diversity on a team makes your team more resilient to stressors, right? It's always good to have different outside opinions. And as a leader, I think you identified it though. It's acknowledging a different opinion, respecting it, and kind of seeing the wisdom to it. So from, basic biology and corn to a boardroom, resilience is built upon that type of diversification. It's really interesting, just an observation for both of you. And I know, obviously I work closely with Michelle too, is we talk a lot about decision fatigue. And decision fatigue, one of the consequences is like a default decision process, right? And so usually we talk about in the sense of like, oh, you do what's safe or you do what's easy. What we tend not to talk about though is actually sometimes people's default is making a decision, whereas other people's default is not making a decision. So when you have decision fatigue, you're cognitively completely overloaded. Things are moving quick. Some people say, you know what? No, I have decision fatigue. I'm just going to default. Let's just make a decision. The most important thing is to make a decision. Whereas other people say, no, the most important thing is not to make a decision. So I think a lot of those personality traits come out when we suffer from decision fatigue at the end of the day, or when our brain is cognitively overwhelmed, is we will default to probably what's worked in the past. So for Strings, in your case, probably you have a history of you making that decision turned out to be, well, obviously it did turn out to be successful, right?
Yeah, people like Michelle, they always, people don't sometimes want a decision. It's that classic, okay, do you want me to just listen and say, wow, that must be tough? Or do you want me to say, wow, that must be tough. Why don't you do this? And I think that is that kind of understanding that sometimes the decision that we need to make is not to give people the problem solution. What actually we need to do is shut up and just go, okay, yeah, okay, fine. Because if we are problem solvers and that's our nature, our kind of sense of decision making as is what we're built on. Actually, that's not always a good thing to give people a decision or give people a solution. What they actually want is us. The decision in our head should be: don't give them a solution, don't give them a decision, just give them time and give them a space to talk to us. And then ask them what they want.
I mean, I think it touches to what you said previously too, when you said, your role of mentorship and coach. Because quite often, I think you said your friend mentioned, as we get older, we turn more into coaches or mentors. What you're imparting is wisdom, right? Because we're always usually focused on intelligence, how fast your brain processes information, your memory, things like that. But as you go through your career, you've learned all of these shortcuts, right? Like you can see the end of a conflict or a situation or a problem because you've been there before. So part of that coaching and mentoring is trying to impasse all of that great wisdom onto the next team, right? So that you can show them, the path to the decision, I suppose, rather than just giving them the answer. And I think that's a big thing, just hearing you talk Strings. It's like right now, you've kind of transitioned into the doing, into like now you need all of that life wisdom you need to pass on. And it's probably frustrating because you just want to do it yourself to some degree.
I have noticed, and the kids have started calling me out on it, is I'm not necessarily finishing sentences in the same way that I used to. And there's a little bit of, I start and then I'm gone on to the next one and I'm on to the next one. And it's this really weird thing that sort of the brain's working so fast, but it's going to the next. And generally I've begun to notice it's happening, at the end of the day when I'm either tired or brain overload. And it's just an interesting thing, is whether it's an age thing that begins to happen, whether it actually is a societal piece that's happening, as I know you guys are all over it, and this decision making all day, more decisions, more micro decisions, and whether or not that's slowing down that cognitive function in different ways for different people is just something that I think is really interesting for so-called high-performing, busy people.
Yeah, no, that's a fascinating insight, and not quite what we've heard before, but I think completely goes back to our core concept of decision fatigue, because what you're feeling isn't being tired, right? It's not necessarily just like another cup of coffee won't solve that trouble for you, right? Basically, your brain has just made so many decisions. It's tough to hold focus and kind of make logical processing steps because your brain's just fried from decision making, essentially. And it's a very specific part of your brain that handles those higher cognitive functions. And your brain doesn't recognize necessarily the magnitude of all the decisions. So scrolling on social media, all those little micro decisions you alluded to, your brain doesn't know necessarily that if those are important or not. It just needs to know, or it just thinks that that's a decision that I need to be making. So by the end of the day, your decision capacities are, basically gone. Your brain can't hold focus. And it is a problem of modern society, right? Like this isn't what was happening 20 years ago. We just didn't have this type of cognitive stressors or overloading. And sometimes it's a bit like we're here, there's nothing we can do about it, but like high performing individuals, like we're hitting a limit. And that's, I think, what people don't really understand. And that limit is a physical limitation of the human brain. Like we can't push it further until the system starts to fail, which we haven't experienced as humans yet, really, but now it's happening and it's pervasive everywhere. So no, it's really interesting because you're cognizant of it. Most people aren't. They just feel terrible. They have this fog that they don't understand. They can't concentrate. They're emotionally dysregulated and they don't really understand what's going on.
When you go through your career, you experience that, you come out, you go, oh God, that was draining. But we think of it as physical and we're not sure. In all my experience, it's not, okay, I need to go and rest my brain. I need to go and have a sleep. It feels more like, oh, I need to go and relax and I need to rest my body, as opposed to I need to rest my brain, or I need to re-energize my brain, or I need to, have some kind of functional medicine to improve my brain. And I think that's something that we talk about better sleep for staff. We talk about physical exercise for staff. But I don't think in my experience, I've not sat and gone, hey guys, we really need to try and improve the mental, agility and decision-making of our teams or myself because I'm feeling a bit slow. Oh, I'll have a cup of coffee. Like that's what it feels like we're in. So anyone that can go, do this, it's a cheat or a hack, or it's actually how your body, like having 20 grams of protein, I think is quite exciting for anyone who's got teams or anyone who has to make decisions.
Yeah. I mean, you actually just hit on like such an important paradigm shift what's happening right now. It's because we are hitting this physical limitation. It's not mental. It's not psychology. It's not willpower, though. It's physiology. It's just the biology of the brain just can't make high quality decisions anymore. So as a leadership team, it's not something we used to think about, to being like, how's the quality of my team's decisions? Right? We think it's the same brain in the morning versus the afternoon, where it's just simply not the case. So if you're in the creative industry, and clinical trials have shown this, and we've talked even on this podcast before with different people in the creative industry, is you have to make sure that your creative sessions are in basically the morning, because when you suffer from decision fatigue, your creativity tanks. Your brain will default to what it's done before, the easiest thing. I mean, Michelle can give personal examples of this as well. It's an interesting question now that leaders need to ask is, one, who should I be giving the decisions to, which is classic leadership skills. But the second is, when should they be making their decisions? Your best performing person could be making shit decisions at a certain time of day. And so you're not actually getting the most out of them. It's just like, it's a coach on a football field, right? Like, when do you put in the players? When do you substitute? When do you change, all of that the strategy behind it to manage physical performance of your team Now, as a leader in an office, we need to manage the decision capabilities or decision skills of our team. So this is why, like, as a neuroscientist, it's just such an exciting field, because we've never explored this before traditionally, because we didn't need to. It's just because society has forced us to kind of do this now.
Sort of observation that I've had for a long time now, particularly around creativity and problem solving. And, you know, my co-founder and business partner on Skoot, he's a CFO by trade, and, you know, News Corp, big decision making, floating business on NASDAQ, you know, it's all finance and it's there. He's a annoyingly brilliant marketeer, and he's annoyingly quite creative. And it's like, I wish I could be a better finance person. But it's interesting how, you know, being a creative problem solver, you know, marketeers and creative people go, oh, we're creative problem solvers. But creative problem solving and you know, finding creative solutions, I think, is through every part of every business. But what's interesting today on that problem solving and going strategically, what if we did this? What if we did that? Our brains are so packed and so busy, and our teams are so, right, get on the Teams call. Let's do this. Let's do this. There's no time for our subconscious to talk to us. We've always spoken about the best ideas happen in the shower, or the best ideas happen when we walk. And I've always maintained that's because we're percolating and processing in the back. And then when we wake up, there's the decision, or when we, you know, leave the meeting room to walk and get a coffee or go to the toilet, you come back, and how many times has someone said, I've got it. What about this? I'm interested in your perspectives as to how do we do that more? How do we actually turn off the front part, or the part of our brain that's like always engaged, to the subconscious part that's processing, and learn to pull those ideas forward? Because a lot of us always talk about, yeah, I wake up in the morning, I have a great idea, I have a pad next to my bed. We kind of train our brains, and I'm interested in, you know, is that something we should be doing more of? Is that something that we should walk out of the room and go, right, no one makes a decision, come back in half an hour? It's just a really interesting space we're in with always on.
Yeah, there's clinical work for this. So you're absolutely correct. By getting out of a situation, your unconscious starts to kind of solve the problem in the background. So taking a strategic break, I like to call it like cognitive choreography, basically, of your day, is making sure that your brain has time to reset, refocus, recharge to some degree while your subconscious is still processing information. The problem, though, is that when people go on a 30-minute break, are they walking through the park? No, they're on their phones, probably on friggin' social media, right? So their brain is not getting any type of retreat or break from decision making. They leave whatever the task they're doing or creative session, which is a good idea, say, hey, let's take a pause, everybody go, take 30 minutes. But that 30 minutes is making things worse if they're going on social media. And clinical trials have shown, and just to show even like nature, getting a walk in nature is critically important. I mean, we recover faster from surgery if our recovery room, we can look out a window and see trees and green, right? Like our physiology is built to see nature and to be in nature. And so going for that walk, not touching your phone, you absolutely are hitting on a key point that's been clinically shown to increase creativity, improve focus, and improve interpersonal communication and team dynamics. Yeah, so the problem isn't that we're giving breaks. We do. It's just, what are people doing during those breaks? They're not giving their brain a chance to take a step.
Right. I'm going to steal that idea, and we're going to have a no phone break. So because you're right, what we do is we say, okay, guys, let's have a toilet break, i.e. take your phone, look at your emails, do something, come back. But actually what we should be doing is a recovery session. It should be a brain sort of rest period, sort of go away and make a cup of coffee, talk about, you know, the episode you watched on Netflix, and sort of just decompress, go for a walk around the park, not do something really quick and really stressful and then come back and try and make a high powered decision. It's a very interesting approach, and I'm stealing it, and I'm going to do it in my next.
There's something in, right, don't shoot me here, but there's something in cigarette breaks, right? And I'm not a smoker. I never have been. But if you think about it, like people who smoke, you know, historically would go out for like 15 minutes. They go and sit outside, often, you know, under a tree or whatever. If you're lucky enough to kind of have some green space around the office, you know, times before they wouldn't necessarily take their phone with them. They would kind of have a cigarette and they kind of, you know, probably take some deep breaths while they're having it. And, you know, there's no benefit to the cigarette, but actually going outside, breathing deep, being in nature, not having your phone with you, coming back and actually having some clarity of thought from it. And so I suppose it's like, what's the new cigarette break without the cigarette, without the phone? You know, I wonder if there's a way we could brand that as something, you know, it's your, I don't know, your cognitive reset or something, but it's, yeah, I don't know. I'm just thinking about it.
I've sort of been doing this in a little while because I totally agree, you know, the nature, the river, the reduction of cortisol levels. But, you know, you generally have a catch up, and my mentoring sessions are actually walking sessions where possible. So we do side by side, we go for a walk, we're in East London and we sit at the canal and we just talk. And I know that from my kids that I'm not going to have a proper conversation when I go, let's have a conversation. But I know when you're side by side, it's proven that you kind of relax a lot more and you have conversations. So I do. It was stolen. Nicky Wicks from The Body Coach, he's CEO down there with Joe Wicks. He talks some walkie-talkies. I think it's a really lovely thing that you just go and you have your meetings whilst you're walking to actually have a different kind of coaching session or mentoring session. And I think that, you know, what type of decisions is interesting. What type of decisions do you make when you're not in the office, when you're in a park, in a field? You know, is it better?
The whole idea of getting out of the office, it's weird though, just because we've gotten like the natural environment is in the office, whereas actually no, the natural environment is outside, right? So I think generally speaking, anything that aligns with what we were initially evolved for. Remember, like 99% of human history was on the savannah, right? Like anything that goes back to that, you're probably going to be more aligned with your basic biology. That's, I think, a good rule of thumb. So sitting in a sterile white room around a whiteboard, we all had to do that. But when it comes to, are you getting the most out of your brain? Probably not. And I'm also a big fan, Strings, of the walking meetings. That's one thing that I've adapted to. And I've noticed a lot of people are slowly coming around to that too, just to go for a walk around the block, just to get out of the office. And it makes it a lot more, like it feels a lot more, or higher levels of camaraderie or something with it. I don't know what it is. Honestly, I don't know what the psychology behind it is, but it does feel like you're walking with a friend, especially if you're trying to de-escalate anything versus, more conflict face on. It's always fascinating to me to talk to leaders like yourself who have like kind of naturally come to so many things we're finding in neuroscience. It's kind of like the traditional Chinese medicine as well. Like a lot of this stuff, like, you know, years of Western science. Now we're like, oh, wait, there is something to XYZ. A lot of leaders have gravitated to strategies and habits that now we're finding are aligned with how our brain is working.
Disruption that we kind of strive for in a way, but when it comes to running a creative business, or you know, what you want is you want disruption, but you want continuity and you want a safe place. So what ends up happening is you revert to vanilla and beige and boring. So the sterile office, and because it's easy to do, but it's interesting that what we want is to be in different environments and to, you know, look up. And I think that kind of sense of, decision making coming from stopping, coming from, you know, the pace of our forefathers, which was slower, which was, you know, about being at one and at harmony, you know, I think is really interesting. Whereas we look at harmony as being sterile and boring. And I think Scott Morrison at Boom, you know, if, you know, does some really interesting things where on a brainstorm, he'll send you outside to be, you know, to look up and to look at the buildings in different ways. He'll tell you to, you know, every day, try and walk a different way to work, to disrupt your decision making and disrupt the flow, which I think is really, really interesting from a, feeling alive.
Like, I love all of this. I think it's like a balance though, like particularly kind of for myself, is almost having these decision sprints where I'm making loads of decisions. I'm making them very, very quickly. A lot of the decisions that I'm making come from experience, come from gut, come from being fearless, and come from kind of the world that we live in. And so, whilst it's nice, I'm a long distance runner. So for me, making, and I walk the dog, 7 kilometers a day, I'm making sure I'm having that time outside, quiet, often with no music or books, and I can just kind of process my thinking and thoughts. But I think there is a place in today's modern society for making lots of decisions and making them quite quickly. The reason why I say that is, working in advertising 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago, where a brand would have one campaign a year, where you would work 6 months on that TVC and, the out of home and everything else, where every decision really needed to be thought about and things needed to be tested and everything else. Whereas now, a brand will have 5, 10, 15, 20, maybe more campaigns running at any one time. You're not doing that mass targeting, you're targeting individual cohorts, and, being able to look at those things and make very, very, very quick decisions. All of those decisions, you're making them quite quickly. If something's not working, move on. I think there's a real place for that. I get a lot of joy out of that as well. I don't know if it's sprints. I don't know if it's agile for decision making. How that can look, where making sure you've got the sprints, but you've got time to reflect as well.
I think there's a societal shift that maybe is impacting on decision making, as you're saying that, Michelle, in the sense that the kids today, their lives are played out on social, right? So every decision they make is on social. Right. There is a natural thing that they all do. So every time, hey, just had a latte, just, got in the car, just like they're playing out those things. And it's a question of whether or not we get to a place with people who don't necessarily have decision fatigue, but they actually are worried about their decisions because they're played out in public a lot more. And as marketeers, we all know everyone's a marketeer, so the finance person in a big multinational telling the CMO who's got 20 years experience that he really didn't like the ad and that he didn't like the casting. Like, everyone's got an opinion, and they've always done that. The CMO isn't going back to the finance director and telling him he didn't like his financial report or the way that it was, didn't like his commas, and he didn't like, but everyone's got an opinion on marketing. And it's interesting now, if all the decisions we make are played out on social, that someone's filming it, that someone's commenting, that everyone can criticize, because that's easier to troll people. Whether or not people's decisions are going to become more hindered or are more hindered by that sense of, I'd rather not make a decision. I'd rather not put myself out there. I'd rather not give you my opinion for fear of it being shot down in public by everyone.
There's this amazing quote: you judge me for the decisions that I've made, but you don't know the choices that I had. People can be quite quick to judge your decisions, but they're never going to see the choice that you had in order to make that decision.
The big change in marketing seems to be that you're competing now for attention. Whereas before, you have these 6-month campaign and a big billboard, I assume, or something painted on British Airways, right? Like, you weren't competing for people's attention. They would just see it, or it would be a TV commercial where they were kind of forced to watch it anyways. Whereas nowadays in marketing, there's so much to consume. There's so much out there that you're just trying to even get my attention, right? So it seems like a very different style of marketing, even just because you have half a second to get my attention before I'm bored, I'm going to move on to something else. So I think, just from the marketing side, it seems like you're trying to get different things.
I think now you've got so many different channels that I saw an analogy or the example being, it's like playing pinball. and you're bouncing people all over the place, and they come down the bottom and you smash them back to the top, and then they're hitting this over here and they're hitting this. And that's eventually you make the decision to purchase. So that path of sale is a lot more challenging, and therefore you need lots more small fires, and some things will hit and some things won't, but you just have to keep going. And that's quite tough, because isolating what was the thing that got you to the purchase. I've always said this. What was the reason why you watched a new Netflix show? Was it the person in the office? Was it something else? But now there are so many more ways to communicate a message based on, just the media. It's quite tough to know what's your big bet? Where do you go? And what's working? And how do you measure it? And what's the data point? So you're sat there as a marketeer going, channel selection, what do I do? And I'm going to get fired. I'm going to get fired for getting it wrong. There's just too many data points. Don't make a decision. I don't do something. And it's exactly the same in sustainability. The age old, you don't get fired for not making a decision. It's so confusing as to what you should do. I'll do nothing. I'll just have lots of meetings with people, and I won't make a decision because this is greenwashing and that's greenwashing. And, oh no, wind farms are really bad, so we shouldn't have wind farms because they kill loads of fish and birds. They're really bad. And therefore you're kind of lost in this world of, I don't know what the right decision is because I'm being told that they're all wrong by someone, because now there's so many different media channels for people to have a voice. But that data isn't often validated. It's a one person opinion. I think they kill more birds. There's one piece of research that says that, and now everyone's believes that wind farms are really bad. They're kind of not. They're kind of a bit better. Nuclear energy is really, really bad. Actually, it's one of the best sources of energy when it's done right, but we're just very scared, understandably, of nuclear power.
I think there's also just like mixing the volume of information that we've got with maybe job insecurity as well. I think so many people are so scared to make the wrong decision if it means that they might be out of work, that the easiest option or the safest option for them is to not make a decision at all. And then ultimately that's hindering progress. But we see that a lot in Asia.
I think, Michelle, we talked about it previously, this idea that I've got that when I use AI too much, it's like I'm passing it from my left hand to my right hand without it going through my brain. And what I feel is I haven't processed it, and therefore I could write an email really quickly and I send it. But if you ask me what was in the email, I'm not sure I can draw it from my brain. I'm not sure it's been processed properly. I just read it and it felt good. And therefore, I've made a decision to send the email. I think it's the right thing to do. But when I'm called on it, okay, what are we doing? Can I articulate that? The decision I've made in the email, I'm not sure most of us can actually talk and articulate what it was we solved and what the decision was we made. I think we've gone left hand, right hand without processing it. But that's just an intuition as opposed to that is happening.
No, it is happening. I mean, from evidence to date, we know that we're losing our critical thinking capability with AI. So no, a major problem with AI is that loss of critical thinking. And I know in my industry, it's like science-wise, it's extremely dangerous because you'll have AI like I was just doing it the other day where Google used to just point you to information and then you had to digest the information. But what they're trying to do now, what the AI tries to do is try to bring all that information together for a conclusion. And it does it wrong quite often. It doesn't know the nuances of the science. It'll combine two papers and make up an imaginary paper that doesn't exist. So like if you lose that critical thinking, you don't think through your data, it's going to be a massive issue. But there has been a clinical trial that specifically showed that our critical thinking is declining as we offload that to AI. Which is scary for a lot of industries. I mean, yes, the creative industry, but think of the medical industry, because now we're going to offload more, healthcare decisions to AI, to whatever you want to imagine that AI has been integrated to.
My wife talks about feeling like a fraud. Like, I feel like a fraud because it wasn't my decision. It wasn't my processing. It wasn't my brain. It was someone else who gave me that. And I think it's an interesting, if you're this leader coming up with decisions and you're doing it, but actually you've got a coach in the back of your ear the whole time called AI, is that like, are you a fraud? Are you a cheat? Are those your decisions? Are you the leader that you think you are? Or actually, are you a fraud? Are you a cheat? Is it, the Wizard of Oz, that this sort of front and it isn't actually truth because it's not you. It's not you, the leader. It's this thing that's giving you all the answers before, which I think is interesting, as it evolves into meta glasses being in your ear, and you're in a meeting and actually the answers you're giving, and it's happening in interviews, the answers that people are given are not their answers. They're reading a script as AI interprets the questions. And I was on a call where I was convinced that I actually stopped the interview and I said, look, hold on. Like, you are so good. It is insane how good your answers are. I'm and I was walking actually. Yeah. And it got to the point and I said, look, I'm going to stop this. Like, your answers are incredible. So I'm just going to ask you some really difficult random questions about you, and kind of just to stress test whether or not I was just getting this bot giving me these answers, and they weren't making the decisions in my mind. I didn't think they were. I think they were just reading a teleprompt. And I kind of think that it's not a good place, I think, when we're not drawing on us as people. We're not drawing, as you said, Michelle, those experiences. The reason that I can make quick decisions, experience just gives you more wounds and more scars. And, that what I believe is that if it feels wrong, it's wrong, and listen to that inner voice that's telling you it's not quite right. All experience gives you is a reference point to say why it's not right. You've just got more receipts, and that's, so your decisions are better because you've got more receipts that you draw upon. AI might take those receipts away from us, and therefore when we don't have learned experience to draw upon, we've just got someone else's decisions that we've put as our own.
And I think sometimes the decisions sound articulate. They sound better than something that you can come up with in your own head. And so therefore you think, I'm gonna just say that. But yeah, you're right.
No, I agree. Sometimes AI throws out some stuff that just sounds immaculate. But then you read it and you're like, this is just factually incorrect. Like, it's just completely wrong on the facts. It's a good point though, because I think AI is not a coach or a mentor, like in my opinion. Like, I have no trust. It's a tool, but I don't have the trust in it as I do in my coach and mentors. And I think people sometimes maybe misplace AI as being that mentor, where it's not. It doesn't have wisdom. It doesn't have experience, right? It doesn't have that intuition. It just gathers data. And if then, like, it's not artificial intelligence. There's nothing intelligence, like from a neuroscience perspective. It's light years away from true intelligence. And I think people just, it does such a good job with its language that it convinces us it's a person, whereas it's just not. So yeah, I think that's a very, very insightful comment from you.
Strings, we've got to wrap. Honestly, it was amazing to talk to you. I feel like we could have kept going. There was so much in there, and we really wanted to talk to you about the different businesses that you work across as well. But maybe we can do a part 2 one day. Next time we come back to London, let's do a part 2. And to everyone still listening, watching, wherever you are, as always, thank you so much. Like, share, comment, drop everything below. We will respond. And as always, make every decision count. And we'll see you next week. Thanks.